Hey friends, Catherine and Erica here. We have a special guest today. Her name is Jennifer Dove, and she is the queen of coloring. She's going to share some Copic marker techniques using
our pumpkin pickup stamp set. This is a fantastic fall stamp set that features a beautiful image of a vintage pickup truck at the pumpkin farm with the puppy in the back and some hay.
It's so cute.
It is just adorable.
It's darling. And so I have a little list. I have my Stamp Nation Canvo.
She's ready.
You're going to learn shading, blending, dots and squiggles, how to create rusts, how to use that brush to do the blending for you, and how to coordinate your Copic markers with the patterned paper.
I love it.
Yeah, so let's dive right in.
Yeah.
Hi everyone, are you ready to start playing with some of the new Catherine Pooler fun stuff that just came out? I'm going to show you how to color the truck. That is in the pumpkin pickup stamp set. And when I make the card, I actually use the pumpkin pickup outline dies. And I'm going to be placing it on some of the beautiful paper that is called Sunflower Fields Forever 6x6 pattern paper. One thing I wanted to talk about is picking out colors. What I like to do is start with the paper. And I chose this one to start with. And I'm going to show you a little bit of my process. It looks like a mess, but I take my markers and I start doing little blends to match the paper that I'm going to be using. And that's how I came up with the colors for this card. So you can see that I brought in some of the reds, some of these teal, blues, and the pumpkin colors. So we're going to have some fun, and I will show you how to get it all colored up. Here I've stamped the truck and the flower in the Catherine Pooler Icing on the Cake. I like it because it's really super dark, but it's not quite black. You want to let it dry pretty well, or use darker colors when coloring, or you can smear the ink. I've given this a little chance to dry, so I'm going to just go for it. For the truck itself, I'm going to be using these three colors. We've got BG72, BG75, and BG78. I like to start with the lightest color first, and I will be working in sections. When I color, I like the tip of the marker to aim towards the line, so I'm not going to color in here without turning it. So the tip of my marker aims towards the lines, and that's going to keep me within the lines, so I don't go outside where I don't want it. So there's my my lightest. I'm going to do some of the BG78 right in here. That's where the fender would be curling back around. I'm also just going to give it a little bit right in here. The next color I'm going to use is the BG75 to blend it out. Now for this, you don't want to go towards the line because you want the back of the brush to be helping with the blends. So I just flip it around. And the back of my brush is going over the line of the previous color. I'm going to continue to do that every time I do some blending. So back to the BG72. Blend, blend, blend. Once it's blended, I can extend it out further. The back of the markers doing the blending. Each piece is going to be done just like that. Okay, so let's go ahead and go to the front fender. I'm going to take my darkest right in there. My medium, again, if you think about it, the back of the marker needs to do the blending while the tip of the marker is doing the extending. And then the lightest color again. Hopefully I don't make you too dizzy by turning the paper over and over and over, but it is easier to blend that way. We are back on to the top of the truck, lightest color. Get her done. Make sure you get all those little sections that are in there. All right, let's start doing some blending. So the BG78, this is going to be in the shadowed areas. So I'm just carefully coloring in between. There's also some darker areas in here, and I'll do the rest later. So we want to show a little bit more dimension, so we are going to just break up the front of the truck from the back of the truck. So we're going to start out with just a small portion and work our way up. So this is the 75. And then we're also going to do a little bit of the 75 in the shadowed area. Back to the 72. So again, if I do it this way, there's a good chance I'm going to end up in the window. So I'm turning my paper a little bit. Blend, blend, extend. Okay. Every layer of color you put on there darkens it just a little bit. So I'm just going to bring in a little dimension up here. All right, let's go on to the rest of the truck. Still working with my 72, that's BG 72. There's going to be some in there around the pumpkins to make them stand out. And we'll do the front part later. Back over to the 78. We're going to create a shadow with the 78 right underneath that upper rail of the truck. There's going to be some darker portions in here and in there. 75, BG 75, just bringing it down just a tiny bit. Back to the 72. Don't overthink it. Just get that color in there. Way back in amongst all the pumpkins and flowers, there's also a tiny bit of truck bed, and I'll just color that with the BG 75. Okay, so we've got this front piece right here. Again, start back with the 72. Get her done. And I missed a little portion in amongst the flowers, so we'll do that. We've got the BG 78. I'm really using that mainly for shadow areas. I'm going to put a little shadow right there. There's going to be a shadow on the fender. I'm going to add a little bit more. And between those flowers. 75. Just starting to work our way down just a tiny bit. Back to 72. Okay. All right, so there's another portion that's kind of hiding. We don't want to overthink it too much, but it's in the fender wells. So we're going to take the 78, 75, call that good. While we have these colors out, we're going to go ahead and color in the inside of the tire. Add a little shadowed with the 78, 75, back to 72. All right, what did we miss? This little piece right in there. All right, so that should be everything other than this fender, which is in the shadow. And I believe we hit every single thing in the teal. All right, so you can, and I am wrong. You guys all see it? I see it. Tailgate. Again, we're just repeating those three colors right now. BG 72, 78, and 75. Shadow. We're going to go ahead and follow the lines that were created by the artist. Some light blending. Back to the 72. Don't overthink it. There's a lot of detail in this stamp. Not hard to color, but it kind of distracts from any imperfections that you might do when coloring. All right, so we're going to go ahead and set those three colors down, and we're going to jump over to doing the flowers. So I chose, although most people, if you look at the paper, the big flower was a sunflower. I wanted a little bit more of the reds in the card, so I chose the red flower. So for those colors, I chose R32, R35, R37, and a little bit R89 where I needed more depth. So I'm going to start with just coloring every single one of the petals with the lightest color, which is the R32. Sometimes it's easier to just block in the first color so you can see everything that you need to color when there's a stamp with more detail. So R32, there's two of those. Now while I'm at it, I also have this flower so that I don't have to bring my markers back out when I'm done. We'll go ahead and color it now. Not hard, right? So far it's just trying to color in the lines. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to take my 37 and 35, and I don't want to overthink this. I don't want to overblend. So I'm just going to flick in my darker of these three colors, which is the R37. And I'm going to also do a teeny tiny bit on the back petals. And I know we have one darker color, which is the R89, and I'll bring that in later. See, I'm doing just a little flick from the center. Quick, quick, quick. And then R35, putting a little bit more pressure, going directly over what I just did, and by putting more pressure it's blending on both sides as well as towards the tip of the petal. If you don't have room, skip it. Some of these little guys I didn't have room to do that. So I'm still using the R35 and just blending and extending. And then I do the same thing again back with the R32, just in case I want to soften it up just a tad bit more. Don't overthink this one. All right. You can see how quickly I did that. Nothing fancy. Now I'm going to take the R89, and because I want it just a tiny bit darker, I'm just barely doing tiny little flicks in the center of all those. And I don't want to blend this out. Very fine little flicks. Okay, so I have my light coming in kind of from this direction. So with this same marker, I'm just doing a little bit of a shadow on the left-hand side. Nothing fancy. All right, so those colors are actually done. You can set those aside. The next one we're gonna do is we're gonna do the green. Again, don't overthink it. I'm using YG63, YG67, coloring in the leaves, just kind of blocking it in right now. Sometimes it's hard to determine where a leaf is, so just find them all. I'm going to go ahead and do it on this one. And then the YG67, it's just going in the center. See how quickly you can do it and still give the impression of a leaf. Quick little flick back with a 63 to soften the edges of this big flower. Not too worried about these little guys. They're not really going to stand out. All right, so while we have those greens, I chose to do the pumpkin stems in the green. So find all those. And I'm just going to give a quick little flick of the 67 at the base of each one of those pumpkin stems. All right, so far I think we're doing good. Moving on. For the center of the flowers, I used a W9 and a W7 and a little bit of the W5. So I'm going to start with doing some dots with the W9 over on the left side. Leave a little white. Do it in our extra flower. By leaving white, the next color can go into that area and it gives a little bit more dimension. So here's 7, dot, 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 and then 5. Go back to the beginning and just start filling those in. You can leave a little white if you want, or you can come back and add white gel pen. Now we're also going to do the tires. I'm going to use the W9 for the shadowed areas. And then in the tire itself, we've got a little bit of shadow up underneath. And when you go to make the card, you're actually going to be covering up a lot of this. So I'm going to use a little 7. The majority of the tire is going to be the 9 and the 7. You can do it just in the black, that's fine too. So you see I left a tiny bit of white, and that's so I can come back and do the 5. Okay, so we've also got a little white rim here, and I'm just going to flick a little bit with the 5, and by doing that it just means, yes, I know it's there, I colored it, but I still wanted some of it to be white. So while we have the W's out, I'm going to go ahead and use W5, 3 and 1. Mainly the 3 and 1, the 5 will just be the shadows. So we're going to do the window. So here's just a tiny bit of the W3 in what I'm considering to be the shadow. You can do it on that side window and a tiny bit on the mirror. Then I can take my 1, blend, use the back of the marker to blend it, and then I can just flick in a little bit into the white area. Okay, I like to come back and do white gel pen in there to add back highlights. I'm going to take the W5, and that is what I'm using to make a very fine line underneath to give it a little bit more dimension. Okay, window is done. Let's go and do the cute little puppy. For the puppy, I decided the E43, E44, and E47. That way he stands out a little bit, but at the same time kind of stays cohesive with the colors that I chose for this. So I'm going to go ahead and use the E43. A little bit there. Do you see how I'm leaving some white? All right. I'm going to use the E47. That's mainly just for the shadowed areas. So we got a little shadow here, a little here, tiny bit underneath his ear, but I want to be careful that I don't make his eye disappear. So I kind of skipped over that. Then I'm going to use the E44. So we're not giving a lot of detail, kind of just giving the look. Getting them colored in without overthinking it. I left a little bit of white around the eyes so that it would stand out. Okay, doggy is done. Let's start working on the hay bales and the pumpkins. Do you see how quickly this is actually going? All right, so here is hay bale, which is Y26. Kind of like a burnt yellow. I actually use this quite a bit for straw and hay. Let's block it in. And then we're going to use YR24 for the shadow. So there's going to be a little bit of shadow behind the pumpkin on all sides. Back here in the back. We don't want to mute it too much. Use back to the Y26 if it needs to be smoothed in. Remember, straw or hay is not really smooth, so I wouldn't worry too much about it. All right, so the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to put down the Y26, and I'm going to be using for the pumpkins the YR24, YR27, and E08 is going to be my darkest color. I've chosen to leave a little white. If you look at the card, the pumpkin has a little white, and that helps separate the little sections of the pumpkin. If it's not your style, then just color that in with the lightest color. So we're going to turn. There's a little bit of white there. I'm going to do a little bit there. A little bit there. So that's the start of this pumpkin. This one is going to be, again, we're using the lightest color, YR24, and doing each section. And this way I know where I want the white, so I'm blocking it in again. Okay, so that gives us our baseline to work off of. So the opposite side of the white on each little section is going to be the E08. You can do one pumpkin at a time. You can do them all at once. Just depends on how fast you want to work. And remember, this little pumpkin is in the background, so it can be a little bit more of that E08. Then you're going to bring in the YR27, soften that edge up. Alright, and then back to your YR24, softening that last edge of the 27. Most of them don't even need it. Alright, so we have the little tail lights, and I chose to use one of the reds that I was using. So this one is R35 with a little bit of white left behind. Okay, it just kind of brings it all in. If you want a little bit darker, you can use them both. And this is the R37. So both of them, both the flower and the truck, are done, other than if you want to add a little bit of white gel pen. I like to do it up in the window, just to break up some of those, all the gray. If you want, it didn't end up with any white, you can add some little dots on the right hand side of the flower. If you're not good at leaving white on the pumpkin, you can come back and add that in. So the finishing touches of this whole thing, right? You got the whole image colored, and I like to go a step further. So I have my Y26, I have my YR24, and I might use a little bit of the E44, we'll see. But what I'm doing is adding rust. Let's take a look at this card one more time. Tucked behind the elements are these little rusty spots, and that just adds that extra something to a card. So I do something called tip to tip. Most of you are probably familiar with it. Some of you probably get a little bit scared. So what you can do, so this is direct to paper, right? You can add in, using little kind of dots and squiggles, some of the rust. So figure out where you want some of this rust. This is how you start. But as you get to darker colors, you're not going to want to go directly to the paper. Okay, so let's get in some of this rust, maybe on the fender where all the water hits, maybe down here in the corner. So we've got some rust happening. Here is my YR24. Let's see what happens when we do that straight too. I guess if you're really light-handed, you can do that. So I'm really doing this motion where it's just kind of a dot and squiggle. Okay, so I'm not doing any blending. So if we want to add a darker color, I'm going to show you. If I went and did this direct to paper, it starts getting really dark. So instead, here's my E44 in my left hand. I write with my right hand, so BG72. I just touch the tip, and I do that same kind of a squiggle motion, and that allows me to drop some of these darker colors in the rust without them being so dark. Okay, When you're done doing that though, it's really important that you take the lighter color, which is for me the BG72. I'll do a little up here and down here. But you're going to want to wipe all that off of the tip of your marker. You don't have to worry about the darker color, just the lighter one. And then put it back in the lid. Now a lot of times when you have two lids off, you put it back in the wrong lid. So make sure that it goes back in the right lid. Okay? And that's how you can add a little bit of rust to your old pickup. So that was fun, right? So here's the card that I designed, and I'll tell you a little bit of some of the products that I used. For this white panel in here, I used this die from the Scallops and Dots dies. Here's the whole die set. It has some really fine detailed little dots, and I thought that was a nice little addition to the card. It was layered on top of some of the beautiful, look at all these different patterns, just gorgeous. So I chose the plaid because it brought all the colors together. And this paper pack again is called Sunflower Fields Forever. Okay. By special request, I love the Love Shadow dies. So this one is called Retro Love Word Die, and I actually die cut it this 2 times. One with the paper packet and then a second one on white, and then I did the shadow. And I like to just color in my paper, my cardstock, so I just colored it in with a color that went with the card. Okay, and of course before I layered that onto the card, I used the outline dies from the pumpkin pickup set. So I hope you enjoyed this. Don't forget to pick up all your little accessories that can go with it, like this beautiful little sequin, and this one is called Tuscany. But I know you're going to have a lot of fun with this card. And get your colors out and get going. Thank you for joining me. Bye.
Wow, that rust technique.
That was incredible.
Love it. We really want to thank our special guest, Jenn Dove, for taking the time to put this together. You guys are going to want to watch this over and over.
So save the link, bookmark it, put it in a special playlist for reference later, because it was just jam-packed with ideas and techniques and so much learning.
Good information.
Yes. Thanks for being here. If you're new to our channel, make sure you subscribe. We go live and do all kinds of videos here on the YouTube channel all the time. We want you to hang out and be a part of our community. So thanks for being here. Give us a thumbs up.
And check out those supplies at shop.caterpillar.com.
We'll see you soon.
Bye.